Welcome to Fantasy Basketball, PH.
Okay, what's up, everyone? Happy New Year again to everyone. I guess it's Happy Three Kings almost. So this is a very special episode. I guess we will start our show with a bang here at Fantasy Basketball PH. Again, this is your fantasy Papi Roy, not Ubre, right? That's Tsunami Papi. But I'm your fantasy papi from the Philippines. So we'll be doing an English content for this episode, and we'll be tackling a lot of things with a very special guest. First off, I would love to do a shout out, the usual shout out to all the Fantasy Basketball PH family. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you guys because uh, it's just 1 month. We started around November 28th and we already had 881 Facebook followers, 66 YouTube followers, 116 Twitter followers, 644 podcast plays. With 27 episodes, I had 11 local and international guests in the show. I had two podcast guestings, one local and one international. And then I published two articles about fantasy basketball. So this has been overwhelming to me because I'm doing it while I'm doing my day job as well and doing the daddy duties. And then, yeah, maybe it's something that if you find yourself doing something that you're passionate of, nothing is impossible. So, hoping for more of the best. Again, we have several mediums. We're available in Facebook at Fantasy Basketball Pinas, Fantasy Basketball Pinas at Twitter, and then YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Pocket Cast. And hoping for more blessings. And again, to my Fantasy Basketball PH family, thank you so much. I slipped in our daily dubs, drop ad, buy and sell. So I have already posted that in our page, and I have also managed to post the fantasy players of the days. Okay, and well, whenever I play this tune, yup,
Oh yeah, you gotta get swifty.
Swifty from Rick and Morty, there's something special that's gonna happen because we will have an episode with the legendary Matt Smith.
Oh
If you
yeah.
don't know Matt Smith, then you're not playing your fantasy basketball game so well. I'm gonna give a shout out to at Esman Sports and at Basque Monster because Matt Smith is one of the four founders and the foundation of the Basketball Monster. Basketball Monster is probably the number one fantasy basketball content in the whole world. He's a fantasy basketball analyst there. And if you're already a subscriber and a follower of Basketball Monster and Josh Lloyd, you know that Matt Smith is the godfather of the fantasy basketball positional tires. Every year, we're getting some goodies. And also, he is the unknown leader of the Luka Doncic religion. So, to all Luka fans here, I guess we are up for a great episode. So, with that said, I'll be putting him on stage. Welcome, Matt.
Puppy Roy, thank you. That was a great introduction.
How did you like do you know Rick and Morty? Do you watch that?
I've seen a little bit, but yeah, just the godfather of fantasy basketball positional teams. Never been referred to like that, but I appreciate it. So thanks very much, and thanks for having me on.
You deserve that, man. And every year we're always waiting. So Matt, anything you want to tell us about you and how you found your love and passion for fantasy basketball.
I guess I've always loved sport in general. Growing up, watching and playing sport, and from that, I guess I found a love of statistics and looking at players and what they did on the field, regardless of the sport. And then, yeah, just found fantasy sport here in Australia, and then eventually through, I guess it was probably video gaming, and just found a love of basketball and NBA and how that translated to fantasy basketball in particular, and been playing now for pretty much 20 years. So yeah, the last probably 6 to 8 of that, been lucky enough to write and talk about fantasy basketball. And yeah, for I think the last 5 years been with Basketball Monster. So extremely lucky, and yeah, just live and breathe fantasy basketball. I love it. I can't get enough.
Great stuff, man. I mean, for me, I've started fantasy basketball like about 7 or 8 years ago, and then when the moment that I saw your takes and I found out about Basketball Monster, you're the ones on top of the top tires that I really follow. So it's a great pleasure for me for you to drop by in this podcast.
No, I appreciate that. And yeah, the fact that you spent what over 2 hours going through our 30 deep industry draft. Yeah, I had to come on and say hello and talk fantasy with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I believe I am a student of the craft, and just watching and observing the way you draft and all of those legendary personalities in fantasy basketball world is just overwhelming. I've learned a lot. Just thinking on why they chose this specific player, and then understanding the possible possibilities, it's amazing. So it's my pleasure to do the 30 deep draft sort of reaction
Yeah,
episode.
no, you covered it really well. So shout out to you for doing that. And yeah, we'll see how the season progresses with our 30 deep league.
Yeah, especially that Devin Booker is not steaming yet, right? So
Yes, yep.
again, guys, we're gonna talk about the rest of the season player projection. So luckily, Matt gave us his time to walk through all of the not all of the players in all of the 30 team, but at least those players that are on a hot topic as of the moment. So like what I always say in all episode, let's rock and roll, or in Tagalog, rock na mga paps. Let's get it on. So let's start off with the Atlanta Hawks. So what I'll do is I'm gonna chime in a little bit of my perspective. So at least Matt could really deep dive on his end. But let's start off with the Atlanta Hawks. Speaking of John Collins. So I call it the John Collins effect because he was really someone that is kind of let's say controversial, given that people are taking him too early, and then people either take him too low. So maybe this is because of the uncertainty if he can replicate what he did last season. Now, after a couple of games, he had a couple of games with 30-point stats, but those were the games that I guess Clint Capella wasn't on the other one, and then on the other one, Gallo was already injured. So I want to hear Matt's take on this one.
Yeah, like you said, he had that one massive game against Brooklyn where he had 30 and 10, and the Hawks dropped 140 points, which obviously isn't going to happen all the time. But we did have some fear with Clint Capella coming across in the off season that would hurt Collins' production, and in particular his boards and his blocks. And so far that's happened. He's only averaging 7 rebounds per game and the one block. The threes are also down, and he just hasn't quite found the sync that he had last year with Trey Young. And we know that the Hawks have added some depth there in the off season. So yeah, it just hasn't quite clicked for Collins this season. We still like him in terms of projections to have him inside the top 50, but he definitely wasn't that second round player that he was last season. So That's why we tend to shy away from drafting him that early this season.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Matt. What do you think about the Atlanta Hawks not extending John Collins? Is it something that, like Josh is always saying, could eventually end up Okongwu taking that place and Collins being dealt?
Potentially, maybe it's just they don't believe he's a max contract player and want to sit down at the end of the season and work through that and come to a deal that's best for both parties. But I'm sure Collins and his manager will be pushing for max and will go out to the market and see what's available. I see Okongo was more of a backup centre to Clint Capella, and maybe they just see that as also a way to clear some cap space and find another player. But from my point of view, I still think that John Collins is a perfect fit there between Trae Young, Clint Capella, and the number of wings that they've got on that team. So we'll wait and see what happens at the end of the season and where that contract falls.
Okay. So speaking of wings, I also stated here the wing battle royale between Bogey, Hunter, Reddish, and Herter. They've been like rumbled from time to time. Bogey starting, Bogey going off the bench, and then Hunter super hot. So how do you see this battle royale?
Yeah, there's probably too many players on the wing there with, like you said, Hunter, Herter, Bogdanovic, Cam Reddish, and we know Gallinari's out injured for a couple of weeks. There's probably too many bodies there for our liking. We ideally probably need someone to miss some time or get traded to open up some playing time. So one of these or two of these guys can really maximise their value. I guess from a fantasy point of view, they all offer something different as well. We know Bogdanovic with his threes and assists. Cam Reddish is a strong threes and steals. And DeAndre Hunter has had a really solid start to the season in points and threes as well. So I guess it's a bit of what you need for your fantasy teams, and they all have a role. But unfortunately, while they're all healthy, they're really going to limit their overall upside for each of them.
Yeah. So do you see Hunter maintaining these hot streaks?
I wouldn't think so. Hunter at the moment shooting about 53% from the field. That's definitely not going to stick. So if that drops back a little bit, those 16 points per game maybe comes back into the 13 to 15 or 12 to 14 sort of range, which will cost him a little bit of value. The steals and blocks 0.4, 0.6 at the moment. So I think Hunter will come back and be predominantly more your points, rebounds, and threes. Where, like I said, Reddish has probably got the steals advantage there. And Bogdanovic, depending on what sort of role, I still like him in that second unit, 6-man type of role where he can handle and distribute. And his assists are still down at the moment, under 3 per game. If he can get them to around 4, that will really boost his value. So, like I said, I think Hunter, he's ranked inside the top 80 at the moment. I think that will definitely drop.
Okay. Thanks for those inputs. I'm pretty sure all of our followers is really observing because I've been telling everyone to sell high on Hunter for a couple of
Yeah,
days now.
yeah.
So let's go now for the Boston Celtics. So I'm quite interested on what's your take with the Celtics backcourt because Kemba is down. Apparently, Marcus Smart and Jeff Teague is also injured, maybe for short term. And then Pritchard is really preaching in the court.
Yeah, Pritchard's been a really interesting one, averaging about low 20, 23 minutes per game at the moment. The 1.4 steals are the standout, and also the efficiency, shooting 54% from the field and nearly 90% from the free throw line. So he's been one to watch. Marcus Smart currently got that thumb injury, but it doesn't sound too long term. He could be back for the very next game. He's had maybe a little bit of a slowish start, but I think, he's going to be a really strong player this season. And like I said, Jeff Teague, he's just really a backup. And Kemba Walker, who knows when we'll see him this season.
Yeah, I'm also not, I didn't touch Kemba in all of my drafts because despite having a good value late, I'm just wondering if he can still stay healthy as season goes by, as well
Yeah.
if Boston will manage his time. So it's something that I was worried about.
Yeah, and I think that once they get him back, they'll definitely manage his playing time and try to get him through into the playoffs fit and healthy and go from there. So yeah, unfortunately, he's going to be stuck on your IR spot for anywhere from another few weeks to a month and even a bit longer. And when he comes back, I'm sure he's going to get plenty of rest, either through games by limiting his minutes or giving him whole games off. So yeah, it's not a good look for Kemba Walker.
Yeah, I agree. How about Time Lord? I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for Time Lord to get some time, but it's really a mess in Boston Celtics front court.
Yeah, it's not quite happening for Boston at the moment. Tristan Thompson experiment hasn't quite worked. Daniel Tice hasn't shown the form that he did last season. And Robert Williams is picking up a little bit of playing time behind those two, but he's still only averaging 16 minutes or just over 16. But in that time, he's nearly a top 80 player, thanks to the 1.1 steals and the 1.6 blocks, plus the 75% from the field and 80% from the free throw line. So that's his big boost. If he can find 20 to 24 minutes, then he's going to be really interesting. So I'm not sure he's quite standard league relevant yet, despite that top 80 ranking. But if something happens to Thompson and Teese in particular, then yeah, the Robert Williams is going to be a really, really interesting player come the second half of the season.
Yeah, I'm still hoping, man. Actually, in one of my league, the weakest player that I have is Marvin Bagley, and I just got fed up and thought of like get Time Lord and then just get a high risk, high reward dude at the end of my bench. So,
Yeah.
would you do that? It's a 14 deep league.
So you drop
Drop
Bagley for
Bagley
Williams?
and then adding Time Lord.
Yeah, if you're playing long term and you've got enough top end talent there and also depth to it's a head to head league, I'm assuming.
Yes, head to head nine cat.
Yep. Yep. So head to head. So if you've got enough players around those guys where you can keep competitive and keep in the top 4 or 6 or however many make your playoffs, and you can still try to stash Robert Williams in one of your bench spots and give him the random games here and there, then definitely. But there might also be that hot free agent that comes along who is guaranteed top 80 rest of season value, and maybe that's the time when you do need to drop Robert Williams and jump on something new.
Yeah, yeah. Hoping that would work. Now, Brooklyn Nets. This team is quite straightforward, but something that everyone is monitoring is Jarrett Allen versus DeAndre Jordan. So earlier, Jarrett Allen finally got a start, and then he exploded. So is it something that we should see even when KD's back?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think Steve Nash came out literally a couple of days ago and said that DeAndre Jordan will probably continue to start, but Jared Allen will see more minutes. And then, yeah, with the KD COVID issue, they put Jared Allen into the starting lineup against the Jazz. He dominated. Rudy Gobert played 32 minutes and had 19 and 18 with 3 steals and 2 blocks. So absolutely massive line. And if something like that's going to continue, even early on in the season when he was playing low to mid 20 minutes, he was grabbing 12, 13, 14, 15 rebounds a game. The blocks weren't quite there in the scoring. So we'll see how that looks. But obviously he had a few more touches against the Jazz team with Kevin Durant out. But yeah, I do really like him as an efficient big man, grabbing all those boards. And if the scoring can take a little bit of an uptick in those blocks as well, then he's a really dangerous fantasy player.
Yeah. And how about Kyrie and KD's back-to-back rest? Is it something you see impacting their value as season goes? Because if in case the Nets won't do well at some point, would they? Do you think they would allow Kyrie or KD to play back-to-back?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an option, and both of those guys are currently ranked inside the top 10. And Kyrie Irving's doing that in 30 minutes a game, and Kevin, 33 minutes a game to be precise, and Kevin Durant in 34. So their per game value is still going to be strong and probably be top 10 or top 12. It'll just be that total value similar to like a Russell Westbrook who's going to sit those back to backs, and maybe long term you get a little bit more value out of a Paul George or a Devin Booker, a Joel Embiid as well, who started off the season in really good fashion. But it depends, how the next nets go, and how much they value a top seeding, whether they do want the one or whether they're happy to go into playoffs with a two or three, and have a home court advantage for the first round or two. But yeah, both of those guys look amazing coming back from injuries.
Yeah. I scooped in Kyrie in some of my leagues, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to get KD because people didn't think that he'll be a sort of injury prone player. But yeah,
Yeah.
going to the Charlotte Hornets, our Wonder Boy next to Luca, Lamelo Ball is looking good when you watch Charlotte Hornets. Of course, just take away some of those very not so good plays, but at least it's something worth watching. So I guess Lamelo is within top 80 right now, right? With his performances.
I can bring that up for you, Charlotte. So Lamelo Ball, yeah, is currently just outside the 80 at 84 in 8-cat rankings. It's probably a little bit lower in 9-cat when you turn those turnovers on. His efficiency we knew was going to be an issue coming into the season, and he's shooting below 40% from the field and just over 70% from the free throw line. But his last, probably 3 or 4 games in particular, against Philly, he had 12, 7, 9, and 2 steals, and then 13, 4, and 5, 4 steals, 2 blocks. Those sort of counting stats or popcorn numbers, whatever you want to call them, really stand out. Struggled early on, just adapting to NBA life, and finding his feet and coming off the bench behind Graham and Terry Rozier. But yeah, the minutes have been strong in the 30s, and yeah, he looks like the number one rookie in fantasy this season, despite poor efficiency.
Yeah. You mentioned Devonte Graham. Seems like he- we do you think he is the odd one out of these three guards? Initially, we all thought that it would be Terry Rozier, but Terry Rozier has been heating up and then just playing the old Terry Rozier. But Devonte Graham, he haven't done anything yet, right?
Yeah, and he's shooting 27% from the field, which is just atrocious. He's had some terrible shooting games, and I think it's only a matter of time before they start ball, and Graham goes to that 6-man role, and I think that'll suit him a lot better, where he can have the ball in his hands a little bit more, control the offense, and hopefully he spends a bit more time trying to facilitate, rather than shoot. And like you said, Terry Rozier, he's been really hot to start the season, and had some massive games with that 35 points and the 7 threes against Philly not too long ago. And as we remember, back to the opening night when he dropped 10 threes against the Cavaliers out of nowhere.
Yeah. This should be quick. How about the Hornets front court? When we with Cody Zeller down, I was amazed that Biombo is getting more minutes than Cody was getting when he was available. I thought this is something that PJ Washington would definitely get tons of center minutes. But do you think they will continue to play Biombo, or it would be inevitable for PJ Washington to start at 5 and pave way to Miles Bridges at 4?
Yeah, I think it's probably largely determined by matchups. But Biombo has had some big games. They've had to play him against Joel Embiid lately, Jonas Valanciunas, DeAndre Jordan, and Jarrett Allen. He also had a game against Andre Drummond with the Cavs. So at the moment, he's filling a need, and he's playing well. I think eventually it'll probably be sort of some PJ Washington, and Miles Bridges has been really good off the bench. So yeah, it's just funny the way it's worked out, and it's seemed quite a good fit there for the Hornets.
Yeah, and I really think Miles Bridges is Lamelo Ball's favorite recipient. So they've been
Yeah,
creating highlights after highlights, right?
yeah, and they're a great combination off the bench, and it's worked really well for both of them. So yeah, hopefully for us that continues for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go with Chicago Bulls. This one's pretty straightforward. I believe Wendell Carter Jr. You are high on him, right?
Yes.
He's not doing quite well, but he's actually progressing well despite those games that weren't that good. Do you think he'll be better soon? Because Gafford played a lot of minutes in the last game, right?
He did, yeah. And like you said, I was really high on Wendell Carter Jr. coming into the season and had him down in one of my breakout lists, I think it was. Um, he's really struggled. He's outside the top 150 at the moment, despite playing nearly 27 minutes per game, averaging 12-7. I think the steals and the blocks haven't quite come to his game yet, just at point 0.4 and point 0.6. The 2.6 assists as well. We heard over the offseason that they were going to try and play through Wendell Carter Jr. a little bit more, and it hasn't quite happened. And the other thing we saw in the preseason was Carter Jr. trying to shoot some threes, and that was just terrible for his field goal efficiency. So hopefully, as the season progresses, that they work on that and that comes through. But I think for the time being, it's just a matter of getting him back to basics, playing through, getting some easy looks around the basket, and then passing out to the 3-point shooters. So I think it's a really good buy low opportunity for Wendell Carter Jr.
Yeah, I'm also holding on him. I have a couple of Wendell Carter Juniors. I still believe in him. He's like the new generation Al Horford, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Uh,
that's a really good comparison.
so how about Otto Porter? So this is the other dude that was making noise in Chicago. Initially Patrick Williams is getting a lot of minutes, and now Otto Porter is automatic in the Chicago Bulls lineup.
Yeah, a massive couple of games. The double double against the Blazers with 19 and 13. The massive game as well against the Washington Wizards with the 28 and 12. We know Washington are one of the most fantasy friendly teams to play against, so no real surprise at that strong line. I think the next probably week or so is really going to tell us a lot about Otto Porter with the Kings, the Lakers, the Clippers, and then the Celtics coming up. Some pretty good defensive teams there, so we'll see and how he goes. But yeah, signs are looking promising for Otto Porter, and those who did have the balls to draft him, yeah, it's paying off for them so far.
Yeah, and I also think when Laurie Markkinen comes back, it also takes the usage away from Otto Porter, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he will lose a little bit of shots and probably some rebounds as well. So that's something to definitely keep in mind.
Okay, so Cleveland Cavaliers scorching hot. My goodness, what can you say about Sexland? I mean, when I was posting early before the season starts, I was calling Colin Sexton Donovan 2.0. So I feel happy telling that. I was just like joking initially, but seems like it's getting there.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable in the first part of the season, shooting 55% from the field from a point guard shooting guard position is basically unheard of, resulting in nearly 26 points per game. Unfortunately, the lack of rebounds and assists are a little bit of an issue, but with the 2 threes, the 1.4 steals, um, yeah, he's just killing it at the moment. I wouldn't expect him to shoot 55% from the field for the rest of the season, and that has him at the moment just inside the top 40. So maybe he can stay inside the top 50, but I think it'll be borderline given the efficiency and the steals and the points and the threes the way he's going at the moment.
Yeah, and how about Garland? He's been a revelation this season, especially early this season.
Yeah, once again the same. The point he brings the assist. The threes are up at 2.5. 45% from the field, 89% from the free throw line. Although he doesn't get here that often. And another player who's inside the top 50 for the Cavs with Larry Nance Jr. and Andre Drummond are the other two. So to have four players inside the top 50 is pretty rare, and somehow the Cavs have achieved that in the early part of the season.
Yeah, and JaVale McGee is also knocking in the top 100. I would guess because he's been providing some goodies coming off the bench, right?
Yeah, and I just wrote about JaVale McGee in this week's Waiver Wire article, and said that yeah, if you needed some rebounds and blocks and that high field goal efficiency, then JaVale McGee is a really good one to look at. Yeah, he's been able to provide some of those really good stats in limited minutes. And while Kevin Love is out for another week or two, then yeah, not much should change for JaVale McGee.
Yeah. Speaking of Kevin Love, as of the moment, I was pushing the followers to get Isaac Okoro because I do believe that he might get backup minutes at PF behind Larry Nance and also play the four and could also play the two, especially if Garland is somehow injured. So, what would happen to Okoro while Kevin Love is away, and then after Kevin Love goes back? What do you think would be the main difference? Because Okoro has been killing it during the preseason.
Yeah, he did. He had a really strong preseason, and unfortunately, he's been dealing with a foot injury, which has kept him out of the last 5 or 6 games. So when they do get, or if they do get a fully healthy lineup, it's going to be really interesting to see how those minutes are spread. Okoro is probably more of a three, and obviously Kevin Love's the four. If they want to go small, maybe they can move up a position. And then we've also got Jetty Osman, who we need to throw into that mix as well, who has had a couple of quiet games, and unfortunately, from an Australian point of view, Dante Exum has done a calf injury and will have missed the next 1 to 2 months. So that's disappointing news.
Yeah. Dante Exum, I remember, was like touted as the next Kobe Bryant, if you remember, right?
Yeah, he had some really high um, or positive feedback and hype coming into the draft, and unfortunately, Dante just hasn't been able to stay healthy for pretty much the whole of his career. He's shown flashes, but never really had a good run because of his body has let him down. So let's hope that he can still fulfill some of that pre-draft talent and hype that made him a top 5 draft pick.
Okay. So let's go to your boy Luka Doncic. Last time I checked, I guess Luka is outside the top 40, but do you think he I mean this is in 9 cat, right?
Yep.
Per value. So do you think he will eventually end up in the first round value after this season?
Yeah, I think so, and you're right. We've got him at 44 in ACAT. His efficiency has been down a little bit, shooting 44, although his free throws up around 80. But yeah, he's what 26 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, and that's a slow start to the season. So his 3 points hasn't translated so far. He's been really poor from the perimeter, averaging 1.3. So that will definitely come up. The steals are at point 0.5. Hopefully that can get back to around 1 per game where it was last season. So yeah, Lucas had a couple of massive games in the last 2 or 3 nights. So maybe some of that buy low window is closed now, but I fully expect Luca to make a big run and definitely be inside the top 10 come the end of the season.
Yeah. And then maybe this is a quick one. Would Willie Cauley-Stein stick? Because now Unicorn is not yet healthy. I assume once he comes back, he'll get all the front court minutes. Hopefully, if Dallas won't manage his time. But as of the moment, Rick Carlisle is testing the water with Willie Cauley-Stein.
Yeah, he had what the last game against Houston where he had 15 and 7 in 24 minutes, but they were also careful with Dwight Powell, just easing him back. He only played the 15. Maxi Kleber only played the 18. And like I said, Kristaps Porzingis should be back within the next week to 2 weeks, hopefully. But I don't think Willie Cauley-Stein is the long-term answer there. And eventually, once Porzingis comes back, he'll have the bulk of the minutes in the front court with Kleber or Powell sort of backing him up, and I assume moving Finney Smith to the 4, and so they can squeeze in Doncic, Richardson, and Hardaway in the 1, 2, and the 3.
Yeah. Seems like Carlisle is preparing Tim Hardaway in the second unit, given that the last game he didn't start, right, but it's effective, I guess. Tim Hardaway really torched the opponent.
Yeah, he did, and maybe they did need some bench scoring, and that worked against. I think it was the Rockets when they won, and he hit what 8 of 10 from deep. So we'll see what happens there, but either way, I do like Hardaway as a threes and points guy. A few steals there as well, but yeah, like I said, I'm not convinced that Willie Cauley Stein is the long term answer for the Mavericks or for our fantasy teams.
Yeah. For the Denver Nuggets, let's talk about one of the draft darlings, Michael Porter Jr. I know you're also high for Michael Porter Jr. He would eventually take all of the Jeremy Grant usage, right? But I
Mm.
was thinking if Jamichael Green or Paul Millsap will get impacted once Michael Porter Jr. comes back.
Yeah, they will. And Michael Porter Jr.'s had a massive start of the season. He's out at the moment with COVID protocols. But yeah, the points, the threes, a couple of steals there as well, and the blocks. He had 3 blocks in the first game against the Kings. Currently sits inside the top 20 in 30 minutes per game. So he's had a massive start of the season, and I think they'll definitely go through him rather than Jamichael Green and Paul Millsap as the season progresses. And he's going to be a really important piece for the Nuggets as they push towards the playoffs and then into the playoffs and hopefully get them towards some NBA finals.
Okay. This one quick question, Matt. Do you buy Will Barton to get the previously top 75 value this season?
I don't think he'll quite be at that top 75, top 80 value just because there'll be so much usage going through Jokic, Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. I do like him as a bit of a bench specialist for the Nuggets who can come in and score and handle the ball. But I think there's just not going to be enough consistency there for Will Barton season long. So if you're in a standard league, I think he's a guy that you'll be able to stream in but unfortunately just won't be consistent enough to be on your roster for any length of time.
Okay. Let's go to one of the wasteland teams. Looking at it, they are really gunning hard for Kid Cunningham. So Detroit Pistons, Killian Hayes is killing us. So what can you say about Hayes?
Yeah, I had him on a couple of my rosters to start the season, and yeah, unfortunately, he's really struggled. He has just injured his hip as well, so I haven't sort of checked the news today. I'm not sure whether we've had an update, but it looks like he's doubtful to play in the next game, and hopefully that's not a long term injury. But yeah, shooting 28% from the field, no steals, just the 3 assists. He's really struggled to fit in with the Pistons. So maybe a good time to buy low in a keeper or a dynasty league. In most redraft leagues, he's going to be really tough to own, but he's definitely a guy to look at for later in the season as he gets used to the NBA standard and the NBA life, and hopefully come post All Star break, he provides us with some decent value in terms of some assistant skills, which can be hard to find.
Yeah. I was hoping Killian Hayes will have a run for Weissman and Lamelo for Rookie of the Year, but looking at it,
Yeah,
he is way back in the list.
yeah,
How about Jeremy Grant? He is really killing it. The main man role seems to be working because Detroit Pistons is actually creating the situation for him to score. So do you think he would be inside the top 50?
he's just inside the top 50 in ACAT at 41 at the moment. He is playing 36 minutes per game. I'm not sure that's sustainable across the 72 games of this year. Shooting 44% from the field, 86% from the free throw line, which I think is fair. 23 points, but it's the 2.7 threes, the 1 steal, and the 1.3 blocks per game, which is really boosting his value. So Jeremy Grant, potentially top 50 player come the rest of the season, but maybe it's a bit of a sell high moment now if you can get a top 30 or 40 player in return.
Yeah, he's also getting back those juicy steals and blocks lately. So Time to sell high. Golden State Warriors. I really do believe Donkey Draymond Green is possibly the second best player among the Golden State Warriors, especially in reality, because since he came back, uh, things are getting well. So the dunking effect seems like Kelly Oubre was unleashed when Draymond Green came back, right?
Yeah, I think that just frees up Kelly Oubre a little bit, and we know how good Draymond Green is at passing and setting screens and opening up, open shots for his teammates, and Kelly will definitely, benefit from that, and we saw that in the last game against the Kings with 18 points and four threes for Kelly. Plus, to start the season, he went none from 30 or 31 from 3 point range early on, so he was really struggling with his shot. So hopefully, yeah, Ubre's turned the corner and he'll be a strong player for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. How about James Wiseman? Do you buy his potential? He's been killing it, especially during the last minutes or the trash minutes.
Yeah, he had some junk time stats there, particularly early on in the first couple of games against the Nets and the Bucks, and looked really good. The blocks have translated. He's had 2 blocks per game for his last 4, but I think like most rookies, it's going to be up and down, a little bit of inconsistency for Wiseman, and particularly with so much usage, obviously going through Curry and then probably Wiggins and Oubre are just behind him. So Wiseman's probably going to be the third or the fourth option on offense. So hopefully those blocks can continue and he can get some of the rebounds up. But yeah, it's just going to be that inconsistency, which is going to be pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I agree. And I just before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to Steph Curry and all the doubters that didn't pick him because there were instances that I got him at seventh pick. So thank
Yeah,
you for that.
yeah, he's
uh,
currently the number one ranked player, and yeah, scoring 32 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4.4 threes per game, if you don't mind.
Wow. Scorching hot. Um, Houston Rockets. Netflix presents James Harden. So, this is something that I really want to take or to get your take on. Do you think James Harden stays because he looks good actually playing with Christian Wood and the guys?
I think he does. I think there's just too long on that contract. The Rockets can wait until they get the blockbuster offer that they're after. For until that happens, they hold the upper hand in those talks. And while Harden is with the Rockets, we know he's going to be putting up massive numbers, and he's doing that again with 33, 10 assists, 5 rebounds, and nearly 5 threes per game. And yeah, he's going to be a lock for a top 3 player again this season while he's with the Rockets, and probably even no matter where he goes. If it's Philly, I think he'll still put up strong numbers. If it's the Nets, he'll probably drop down a little bit with next to Irving and Durant. But yeah, like I said, I'm fairly confident that he'll remain with the Rockets for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm also wishing that to happen because Christian Mokojin, I call him Mokojin, the player in Tekken, because he's a wood that can almost do anything. So Christian Wood is really killing it. Seems like the fourth round value is pretty low when we started drafting. What can you say about our boy Christian Wood?
Yeah, Woods had an amazing start of the season. Strong points, good rebounds. The blocks in particular, he had 4 blocks against the Kings. We haven't seen much or hardly anything of DeMarcus Cousins this season though, so that is one to keep in the back of your mind. But I'm sure the Rockets will look after him and ease him through the season. But yeah, Christian Wood is he's having an unbelievable start, and there's no reason to think he can't continue with something similar for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Speaking of DeMarcus Cousins, before he was given those technical fouls, he seems to be really going at it because in just a couple of minutes he gave us popcorn value. So, given that Christian Wood can also play four, I was hoping that DeMarcus Cousins would also be one of those breakout players in Houston.
Yeah, like I said, the Rockets are sort of easing him in. We know he was away with, well, I think it was COVID protocols again earlier in the season. He had the 14 minutes in his first game against Sacramento, and that slightly decreased. He was ejected from the last game against the Mavericks, but he's had 2 blocks in both of his last 2 games. But um, yeah, I think there'll be times when Wood and Cousins share the court together, but it's probably best for both of their value if they split as much as they can, and if Cousins comes off the bench, that might be a really good thing for his value. So yeah, I think we just need to wait and see how that all plays out, and give DeMarcus Cousins a little bit of time, and show some patience there as he gets himself going.
Yeah, and those technical fouls officially welcomed DeMarcus Cousins back in NBA. It won't be a good welcoming without those technical fouls. uh, Indiana Pacers, Victor Oladipo, a revelation. Seems like he's one of those value picks almost late in the drafts, right? And given that his contract is questionable, maybe do you think Indiana Pacers is kind of selling him?
Yeah, potentially. He's still only 20 or 28 years of age, to turn 29 this season. But yeah, posting top 40 value at the moment, with the strong points, rebounds, assists, and the threes in particular are up to 3.3 per game, 1.3 steals as well. So really nice start from Victor Oladipo, and with TJ Warren out long term, then there's going to be a lot more shots and offensive responsibility go through Oladipo.
Yeah. Actually, the next statement I would be saying is who would be the replacement for the so-called bubble MVP, TJ Warren. So as of the moment, it definitely would the usage would definitely go to the core members. But outside of those three or four, Justin Holiday seems to be the one getting those spare usage or minutes, right?
Yeah, I think the minutes have been left behind by Warren will largely go through Justin Holiday in particular, and then Doug McDermott and Aaron Holiday as well. Justin Holiday has the most fantasy value of those three, largely thanks to his steals and 3 points per game. So it's probably not quite at standard league value to have him on your roster long term, but he's a really nice streaming option. And if you're in a 14 team league or deeper, then yeah, you can definitely have him on your roster for those threes and steals.
Yeah, it's very juicy actually. For the Los Angeles Clippers, Nick Batum. For the past seasons, I can only see highlights seeing him on the bench and smiling. So now he's been doing a lot. So what do you think about Nick Batum, especially when Marcus Morris Sr. comes back?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we haven't seen anything of Marcus Morris this season. I think he's dealing with a foot injury. Nicholas Batum is starting and playing really well. Another big game today against the Spurs with 21-9. But I just don't see there to be enough usage to go through Nicholas Batum on a nightly basis, with most of it going through obviously Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and then Ibaka and Lou Williams. But Nicholas Batum, really good stream option if you do need some threes, points in particular, and maybe a steal as well. But yeah, like you said, we haven't seen Marcus Morris yet, and that will probably take a few minutes off Batum in particular.
Yeah, and there was one question from my friend about Lou Williams' projection, and I was thinking that the emergence of Nick Batum was actually impacting those guys, Lou Williams and maybe Marcus Morris, because of Nick Batum's providing the space and the playmaking. Do you think Batum impacted Lou Williams as well because he's been down for a couple of games now?
Yeah, a little bit, and the Clippers also added Luke Kennard in the off season as well, who has probably taken a little bit of Lou Williams' shots and playing time, and the Clippers are still trying to figure out how that's all going to look. Throw in Reggie Jackson and Patrick Beverly, and yeah, those four, while they're all healthy, are really going to take minutes and value away from each other.
Yeah. Lastly, Zubac. He looked someone that can only already be dropped because he's not doing anything, and the minutes aren't also there. And there was a game wherein he didn't get even one rebound. So I don't know what's happening with Zubac.
Yeah, once again, playing behind Ibaka and Kawhi Leonard in particular, it's just going to be a struggle for him to get enough minutes to contribute on a nightly basis. He's a really nice player if you want to get a small boost in your field goal percentage, in particular at the end of the week. Maybe he's a guy to look to spot start when they rest Serge Ibaka or Kawhi Leonard, and like we mentioned that Marcus Morris has still come back into that front court mix as well. I still like Zubac's upside and his ceiling for his high efficiency and blocks in particular as well. But yeah, there's just not enough minutes there at this point in time for Zubac, unfortunately.
Yeah. In one league, I actually dropped him and got Kelly Olynyk that will might talk later. So for Los Angeles Lakers, Anthony Davis isn't the number two player as of the moment. I'm pretty sure that he'll be going back to on that for that place like after a few more weeks. But do you think Anthony Davis slides in number two? Is there a possibility?
I don't think so. I think we'll still see Harden, Davis, and Curry as the top three. We need to have a look at Carl Anthony Towns as well. Giannis is in the mix, but we know his free throw percentage is going to bring him down. Luka's probably not quite there. Dame Lillard probably not quite enough steals. But Anthony Davis is posting second round value at the moment. Had a slower start to the season. Had some nice games of late. But he's just averaging the 1.1 blocks per game, where we know he can put 2 to 2.5 blocks up, and the free throws down a little bit as well. So Anthony Davis is just warming into the season. We know the Lakers had that short off season after winning the championship last year, so I wouldn't be too concerned if I own Anthony Davis. I still think he's gonna come good and yeah, be that top three player that we know he can be.
Yeah, I do agree. Lastly, for the Lakers, do you think who is the best fourth Laker? Because I was thinking, fantasy wise, it should be well LeBron, Davis, and maybe Schroeder.
Yeah.
So, who do you think would be the best fourth Laker? Is it Mark Gasol? Is it Monster Harrell? Or is it
Yeah.
THT?
Yeah, it's probably Montrezl Harrell just because of his high field goal percentage and the solid points and rebounds. But there's a massive difference between Davis and LeBron, and then a huge gap to Dennis Schroeder, despite how good he's been, and then another gap, next to the rest. And while Anthony Davis and LeBron James are healthy, it's going to be really hard for any of the rest of the players to have any significant value.
Yeah. Outside of almost three fantasy players, all of them are like on and off. For the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm thinking what is the actual effect of Ja Morant and Triple J's absence because Tyus Jones is playing, giving us dimes. The Anthony Melton just played earlier and is looking good. So at least for the next few weeks, who do you think would emerge aside from Kyle Anderson?
Yeah, Tyus Jones is the one who's obviously starting there in Ja Morant's absence. Been getting some really strong playing time around the 30-minute mark, but he is largely an assists and steals specialist. He's had what's that nine steals in his last 5 games. He did have that big passing game against the Hornets, throwing out 12 assists and then 8 assists against today against the Lakers. They do have some good matchups coming up against the Cavaliers, the Nets, the Cavaliers again, and then a double header against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and maybe a bit of a revenge game there for Tyus Jones. So we'll see how that looks. Kyle Anderson's been massive. Um, Dylan Brooks has been taking probably too many shots for our liking, but he's putting up some good numbers, some threes, some points that is, and also contributing in some steals. But yeah, hopefully it's not too far away before we see Jaron Jackson Jr. back on the court, and then Ja Morant back from that ankle injury.
Yeah. Actually, I call Dylan Bricks in all of my episode, but he's actually doing well. Actually, the steals, the assists, and the rebounds are surprising.
Yeah,
Last for the Memphis Grizzlies, Brandon Clark. Are you one of those managers that is high with Brandon Clark?
uh, I'm not. Brandon Clark's probably a little bit overhyped in my point of view. He's playing 27 minutes at the moment, and he's not even inside the top 200 with the 10 rebounds. 10 points, 5 rebounds, just under a block per game, shooting 43% from the field on 10 attempts, which is really poor for a big man. And then doubling that down with 44% from the free throw line. So he's just killing you in efficiency and not doing enough. Gorgie Deng is the big man there, the backup big man who people probably should be looking at, who can be well or far more efficient and contribute in some steals and blocks in particular. So I think if you're holding on to Brandon Clark, hoping for a breakout, unfortunately, I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed.
Yeah. But the field goal percentage, just like you say, is something that could actually help some of the team. But especially now with the emergence of Kyle Anderson, seems like Brandon Clark couldn't, like you said, couldn't penetrate the top 100 for the Miami
Yeah,
Heat. Yeah.
yeah. I was just going to say, in Clark's Brandon Clark's actually owned in 70% of Yahoo leagues, which is just far, far too high in my opinion.
Yeah. Lots of fantasy analysts hyped him back in the draft. I can remember. I can actually name one. But yeah, seems like it's not working. Despite having the best opportunity that he can, right? This is the moment that he could shine, but unfortunately, it's not happening.
Yeah.
The Miami Heat, Tyler Hero is killing it whenever Jimmy Butler is out. So, do we see some improvement for Tyler Hero? His stats and his plays are almost the same back in the bubble. So I'm not sure how can he further improve.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And he's averaging, what, 32, 33 minutes per game for his 14 points, the 6 rebounds, and the 5 assists. And that looks really good. But then you throw in the half a steal a game. He's never going to average a steal a game because he's not that sort of player. The 46% from the field and the 80% from the free throw line is okay. But unfortunately, it's really that lack of defensive stats which is going to cost him. And he's just outside the top 100 at the moment in 8 cat leagues. And yeah, until he can get his steals to one per game, which, like I said, I don't think is possible at least this year. Yeah, he's going to struggle to be a top 80 player and maybe even a top 100 player.
Yeah. He's just quite popular, especially to those NBA fans that also collects NBA cards because he's one of those players that has good value in terms of NBA
Yeah,
cards.
yeah,
Um,
and maybe
yeah,
long term, if he turns into a CJ McCollum type or even better, but at the moment he's probably in that classification of being a better real life player than he is a fantasy player.
yeah, actually. But what I love Tyler Hero is his IQ. He can really recognize those pick and rolls, and whenever Goran does the penetration, there's a specific play and specific system that they've been playing all time. So I think that's the reason why Hero and Duncan Robinson is way ahead uh,
Mm.
uh, from the Kendrick Nunn. I was thinking of the
Yes,
name
yeah,
because
yeah,
initially
definitely.
Kendrick Nunn was last season, but eventually when the system gets played, it really Kendrick Nunn is the odd one. Like, he can't really recognize those plays. He can go through those pick and rolls. He can recognize the defensive plays led by Butler and Adebayo. So I guess it's something that you won't usually notice if you won't watch carefully in how Miami plays, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Lastly, for Hit, Kelly Olynyk. he's Mr. Deja Vu. This is has been happening since his Boston days. So
Yeah.
I think we should ride the wave, right?
Yeah, and once again, we've seen this all before with Kelly Olynyk. You they have a good game like he did today against the Thunder, posting 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 threes. A couple of games ago against the Bucks, had 15 points and 5 threes and 8 rebounds. And then I've been absolutely inundated with questions on Twitter asking if people should add Kelly Olynyk, and we've seen this before. He'll have a good game and then he'll go missing for 4 games, and then he'll have a good game and then we won't see him again for another week. So if you want to pick him up as a streaming option, then go for it. The Heat have a game coming up in a couple of days' time against the Washington Wizards, which I think you could really target to look for him to have a big game there. But with games coming up two against the Celtics and two against the Philadelphia 76ers, I think if you're adding Kelly Olynyk looking for this production to stick, once again you're going to be pretty disappointed. So I wouldn't be dropping anyone of value to go on at him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Let's go for the Milwaukee Bucks. These two players are the standouts for the past days. One because Brolo seems to be lost in the first couple of games. He's not doing those solid blocks, and well, we all know he won't rebound, but he also doesn't shoot well in the outside in the perimeter. So seems like he's picking it up, right?
Yeah, like you said, he's really struggled to start the season. Um, what's he done lately? He's had what 2 threes, 3 threes, 1 3, but yeah, the lack of rebounds, and he's not even putting up the strong block numbers that we know he can either. Just at 1.3 per game, and then the 1.4 threes, and just the 8 points per game. So his numbers are well down from last season, and that has him outside the top 130. I wouldn't expect a massive bounce back from Lopez either, with so much ball going through Giannis and Middleton, Drew Holiday, and Dante DiVincenzo has been huge to start the season as well.
Yeah, maybe he misses his brother.
Maybe
Um,
maybe he does. Yeah.
he
No
needs to
no no
like
wrestling moves in the locker room. No wrestling moves in the locker room, Roy.
yeah, I agree. How about Josh's one of his favorite players, Punch Bobby Portis. I call him Bobby Pacquiao. If you know, here in the Philippines, we all love Manny Pacquiao. So he has a brother, Bobby
Oh yeah.
Pacquiao.
All right.
That's why in my show I call Bobby Portis Bobby Pacquiao because he's Punch Bob. So,
Yep.
but then again, he's killing it, right? Whenever Milwaukee Bucks has a large lead, he really thrives.
Yeah, he's a guy that comes in dunk time and cleans up and can put up some decent points and rebounds in particular. So yeah, if you are in a deeper league, he's definitely worth a look. And if you can, the Milwaukee Bucks can keep winning big, and even at times, they'll probably look to rest Giannis and maybe even Brook Lopez as well. So there is a chance that there's nights where Bobby Portis comes in and plays, maybe even 28 to 30 minutes come later on in the season, and can be a really interesting spot start.
Yeah. Let's go with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Since Cat was gone, it's been the downfall of the Wolves. Uh, I was hoping Nasrid would be better, but he's been trending down. So, what can you say with Timberwolves in general? Does this mean that Cat they really need Cat, and Cat might go back earlier than we expected?
Yeah, so the Timberwolves are currently on a road trip. They played the Nuggets today and got the Blazers in a couple of days' time. And then, the Timberwolves have said that Towns' wrist injury will be re-evaluated once they get back into Minnesota and have a back-to-back at the end of this week against the San Antonio Spurs. So hopefully we know more then. D'Angelo Russell had a massive game today, and it's been pretty good the last few games. As you said, Naz Reid just hasn't, done enough. Had a couple of good lines, but he was never going to set the world on fire. And Malik Beasley's probably the other one who has had some really good scoring games and putting up a few 3-pointers as well.
Yeah. We had the sort a kind of look today, right? With Juancho Hernan Gomez. It's like a revenge game earlier.
Yeah, he was massive today against the Denver, 25 and 5 threes. But in terms of revenge games, they played the Nuggets 2 days earlier, and he had 6 points and 5 rebounds. So yeah, struggled in the first one, and then went massive today. And he will have a game where he does put up a decent line, but like we said, with a number of other players, just lacks that inconsistency or lacks that consistency. Sorry, that won't see him on rosters for any length of time.
Lastly, Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards seems to overtake Rubio and maybe some of the minutes with Malik Beasley as well. He's really getting lots of minutes. So the emergence of Edwards seems to have a hit with Rubio. That's the way I see it. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, there's just too many players in that backcourt with Russell, Beasley, Rubio, and Edwards for all of them to get playing time. The majority will obviously go through D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley, and then Rubio and Edwards will get the leftovers, which yeah, unfortunately just won't be enough for either of them to have any substantial value. But Anthony Edwards has had a couple of nice games, and we'll see how that goes. But apart from scoring, just isn't doing enough in the other categories.
Yeah, it's something that we already expected, right? But maybe when knock on the wood, if Cat has some delays in coming back, maybe Edwards could get loose alongside those other two guards. But let's go now with New Orleans Pelicans. One of probably some steal of the draft, Eric Bledsoe. So no one's drafting him. From my end, I experienced drafting him on the almost 11th round. So he's looking good actually, despite those duds initially in the first games.
Yeah, he's slowly coming good. For the season, he's still just ranked outside the top 110, but the last 3 games in particular have been a lot better. And I think there was some information a couple of days ago where the Pelicans said that they really need to do a better job at getting him some looks and helping him out, with the ball and passing and that sort of thing. And maybe that's shown in the last few games. So yeah, signs are looking positive for Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah. And how about Steven Adams? He's quite a revelation. So whenever the Aquaman goes off the court, the defense rating of New Orleans Pelicans goes down, right? He's been looking good in the Pelicans uniform.
Yeah, he's doing what he did in the Thunder, and that's providing a real interior presence, some good points. We know he's always going to be efficient around the basket. The free throw percentage is always going to be a struggle, and some really good steals from a big man, which is rare.
Yeah, I would agree. Probably he just like stepped in a let's say an improved favors of some sort.
Yeah.
Uh, New York Knicks. This is something that maybe we have to check several names. So first up, what can you say about R.J. Barrett and Julius Randle? I've been preaching in the past episodes, especially during preseason, that Tibbs is one of those coaches that you don't want when you have a lot of young guns. But one of his silver lining is when you get the green signal for Tibbs, you will play like 3 hours of playing time. So it seems like RJ Barrett and Randall is having that treatment.
Yeah, so RJ Barrett is playing nearly 39 minutes per game, which is just insane, and obviously that won't stick. And shooting 40% from the field on 16 attempts and 77 from the free throw line, and that efficiency, particularly from the field, really drags his value down, and he's outside the top 120 at the moment. So I don't talk about points leagues much because I play in category leagues, but yeah, he's a player who has a lot more value in points league than he does in category leagues.
Yeah, I agree. Julius Randle on the other hand, I've seen a lot of trades happening all over those fantasy groups, and then they all people are really high on Julius Randle. Actually, he's doing a great job aside from those TOs and the percentages, but seems like it's gonna stick, right? I don't see any reason even Obi Toppin gets healthy.
Yeah, I guess the only reason is once again that playing time at 38 minutes per game. Not sure that's going to be a good thing for Julius Randle or the Knicks long term, but yeah, at the moment, the 22 points, 11 rebounds, the 7.4 assists. We know Julius Randle's always been a strong passing player, but those assist numbers are huge. And yeah, just Mitchell Robinson. Um, I personally don't rate as a fantasy player. And Nerlens Noel, he showed some signs pre-season, but yeah, that hasn't translated over into the regular season either.
Yeah, I agree. And lastly, can you pick uh, a good guard in New York Knicks aside from maybe Quickly and Peyton? Do you think who's gonna be the winner?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. Out of those two, I think probably eventually they'll have to hand it over to Quickly. But if you want just a pure guard, Alec Burks is probably the one that you want to own. He's out injured at the moment. He's been questionable for the last few games with an ankle injury, but really good scorer, 3-point shooter as well. And currently averaging just under 4 rebounds and 4 assists per game. And he might have been dropped in leagues with that injury, so maybe go and have a look at the waiver wire.
Yeah, I would agree. And actually, seems like Alec Burks is better than Luca all along,
Yeah.
based on the initial value, right? Um, okay, si Thunders, Shea is not doing well. Majority of the managers reached to get Shea. Actually, I'm one of them. I didn't reach like too high, but whenever Shea is available, I ensure that I get him. I guess it's about how he handles the defense, because if you're the opposing team, there's only one player that you'll definitely need to contain, right? Which is Shea.
Yeah, that's it. He's always going to be the dominant player on the offensive end for the Thunder, and yeah, like you said, opposing teams can really target him and shut him down. And yeah, shooting 43% from the field at the moment on 15 attempts is lower than what we expected. So with the increase in that will obviously come the increase in points per game. And I guess the other thing is his defensive stats as well. The steals are at point 0.5, blocks at point 0.5. He's a really good perimeter defender, and hopefully those steals and blocks can come up a little bit as well. So potentially a bit of a buy low opportunity there for SGA.
Yeah, I agree. Quick question: do you think Lou Dort could get better aside from the ones we are seeing right now?
Um, yeah, I don't see why not. There's still plenty of room for him to grow. We saw him in the playoffs at the end of last season. Had some really good games. Started off the season strong. We saw the game against Utah, posted 26 points in the 5 threes. There's still a lot of work for him to do, but yeah, no reason why he can't get better. And what is he? He's only about to turn 22 years of age, so still at least 2 or 3 years away from his prime. So yeah, for those in keeper and dynasty leagues who do have Lou Dort, then yeah, be patient and hopefully it pays off.
Yeah, I agree on that. Lastly, for the OKC, I am a big Pokusevski fan. I'm digging his value late in this season. So, him, Malidon, and Roby, do you think this guy, these guys, or these young dudes will definitely contribute late in the season? Maybe once George Hill or maybe Horford gets traded of some sort?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to keep an eye on these guys as the season wears on. I'm not expecting, and I don't think anyone's expecting the Thunder to make a playoff push. So they'll eventually turn to these guys and yeah, give George Hill and Al Horford rest when they can, and see what they've got in Kozlowski, Roby, and who was the other one you mentioned, Maladon, I think as well. Yeah, so they're ones to put on your watch list and see how they go and the rotation and the minutes grow for them as the season progresses.
Okay, let's do some fast talks. Markel Fultz, MIP or Shea? Would he be the your most improved player? Who do you think would get it?
Probably at the moment, probably off the top of my head, Jeremy Grant.
Oh yeah.
From the Pistons, I'm probably missing a couple of players, but yeah, question without notice. But Marco Fultz has been really good to start the season as well, and really like his season long value.
Yeah, and surprisingly, he's actually having some slump of some sort. So
Mm.
it can only go better, right? How about Cole Anthony? People are really high on Cole Anthony. I don't know why. I mean, I get his value. Actually, in one of my episodes, I told everyone that he is someone to watch during preseason because on the depth of Orlando's backcourt, but for people to get him like in 12 team leagues is quite fascinating.
Yeah, I don't think there's any need to be owning Cole Anthony in 10, 12, 14 team leagues. He's outside the top 220 at the moment, and while Markel Fultz is fit and healthy, yeah, there's definitely not going to be enough minutes for Cole Anthony. But if Fultz does miss time, then yeah, he's definitely one. People will be running to the waiver wires to pick up.
The Philadelphia Sixers on the other hand is killing it. One main reason is Tobias Harris. He seems to be enjoying his he got reunited with Doc Rivers, right? So sell high on Tobias Harris.
Yeah, I think so. I was just going to bring up his value at the moment. So what is he? He's the 12th player, 12th ranked player, so posting
Wow.
first round value. So that's definitely not going to stick. And the 1.3 steals, 1.3 blocks, in particular, a higher 52% from the field and 92% from the free throw line. So I don't think that efficiency can stick either. So if you can get a top 20 back, a top 20 player back for Tobias Harris, I'd definitely be cashing in.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And Shake Milton, I've been getting a lot of questions and hesitation actually to drop Shake Milton, maybe because of the previous rumors during preseason on how Doc Rivers love Shake Milton, but
Mm.
he's just not consistent. Do you think Shake Milton will eventually establish that 6 month role?
Yeah, he's playing some decent minutes at the moment, sort of that 25, 26, 27 minutes per game. Some okay points, assists, steals, threes. But yeah, while the Sixers are fully healthy, it's going to be really hard for him to reach his potential. But yeah, not a bad streaming option in 10 and 12 team leagues.
Yeah. And again, another shout out for the Sixers. Seth Curry is really looking good at Sixers. Do you agree?
Yeah, he's been fantastic. Called off in the last game against the Hornets, but prior to that, had 21-21, dropping a heap of threes. We know he's always efficient as well, which helps. So yeah, really like Seth Curry as that points and threes guy who doesn't really hurt you anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Phoenix Suns. There's a lot to talk to with Phoenix Suns. Your boy Devin Booker. Well, personally, they are really doing great. I mean, they lost just the game since the bubble, but
Mhm.
in terms of fantasy, CP3, Booker, and Aiton really started slow.
Yeah, they have, and that's probably a byproduct of bringing in Chris Paul, and the Suns are, like I said, winning games and being super competitive, so they can spread some of the love around. And Devin Booker, his assists have dropped down to just the 4.4 per game, so he's taken a bit of a hit. I still think he can average, 5 to 6 assists, and the points of the other one, he's down at 21 points per game, where we know he can be at least a 26, 27 per game scorer. And the really weird stat for Devin Booker is the 73% from the free throw line, where he's high 80s at least. So there's a few areas there that Devin Booker can definitely improve.
Yeah, I agree. And at least Aiton is looking great now. So I've read an article saying that he seems to be not ready on the off the bat in this season. So seems like he's hitting up. Do you think he could eventually be that second rounder value this season? Because a lot of managers were really trading away Aiton.
Mm. Yeah, he started off slow, and as a Suns fan, he was quite frustrating to watch earlier on in the season. But his last two games against the Nuggets and the Clippers, in particular, have been really good, and he's going to be a really important piece for the Suns this season as to how far they can go in the playoffs.
Yeah. And how about the two Cams? They've been playing well, Cam Payne and Cam Johnson.
Yeah, but
This they are at some point in time, maybe Cam Payne would definitely get some steam, especially if CP3 will rest, and also Cam Johnson get some of those minutes in the four.
Yeah, so the Suns have four back-to-back sets in the next 4 weeks. So I do expect the Suns to give Chris Paul some sort of rest, during maybe a couple of those games. And when that happens, or if that happens, then Campaign is a really good player who you can add and put in for some points, assists, maybe some threes and steals as well. And Cam Johnson, yeah, just a really reliable three-point shooter. Dropped off a little bit in the last couple of games, but yeah, some really good signs there for Cam. Had a really nice rookie season last year as well. And like I said, if you need threes, then yeah, you can easily count on him.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the Phoenix Suns. They've been killing it. Wow. I guess this would be the highlight of this episode because we have to talk about Nurkic, we have to talk about Covington. So Nurkic is really progressing as games go by, but we've been finding or searching for the root cause or the reason of this slump. What I found was Nurkic having some like personal issues or concerns because of her grandma passing, and then maybe he is out of shape. So I mean, what can you say about these two guys, Nurkic and Covington?
Yeah, so Nurkic, not too sure what's going on there. The minutes are down, the form's down. Maybe there is some things going on in the background that we don't know about. But yeah, I still think Yusuf Nurkic can be a really strong player this season, and once again another good buy low opportunity. But I think you do have to be patient. And Robert Covington, he was always going to lose value coming over from the Rockets last season, where he was in an ideal situation, and the threes in particular are down, and the blocks per game, the steals are still good at 1.6. But yeah, I don't think there's any chance that Robert Covington's going to be a top 50 or top 60 player. I think he's probably somewhere in the 80 to maybe 100 range is his best case scenario.
Yeah, and they keep playing Carmelo Anthony, so maybe that's one of the
Yeah,
reason that's
yeah,
it's
that
been
could be part
clogged.
of it too. Yeah.
I have to play this one for the Sacramento Kings. If you know Kurt Angle,
Oh yeah.
yeah, this is for Hassan Whiteside and maybe Marvin Bagley. So they are super underwhelming, especially Hassan Whiteside. So I guess we have all the green signals to drop Hassan Whiteside. Is there any chance that Hassan Whiteside revives his top tier stats? Because the only thing that we can actually bank on would be Marvin Bagley's Mr. Glass health. So what can you say?
Yeah, the only thing I think that will revive Hassan Whiteside is something happening to Rashawn Holmes, who's clearly taken over that number one big man spot for the Kings. So if you are hanging on to Hassan Whiteside in 10, 12, 14 team leagues, you can move on. Probably in deeper leagues, you might have to consider him still. But yeah, Rashawn Holmes is definitely the main man now in Sacramento.
Yeah. Some silver lining is Tyrese Halliburton. He is really, really good. I guess he's just one trade away to stardom. Maybe when Buddy Hield gets dealt, he's definitely gonna step up.
Yeah, and that's the chance. But even with Buddy Hield there, his first 5 games have looked really really good. Some good passing, 3-point shooting as well has been quite efficient for a rookie, which is rare. I'm currently dealing with a bone bruise, but yeah, he's been upgraded to questionable for Wednesday's game against the Bulls. So hopefully he plays then, or if not, he's yeah back on the court pretty soon.
Do you think he can like have a run for rookie of the year against Wiseman and Lamelo Ball?
Yeah, I think Lamelo Ball's probably still the favourite at this stage, but yeah, there's no reason why Halliburton can't really push him, and yeah, the Kings really like him. His game translates really nicely to the NBA, and he's a good fit there with Fox and Hield, regardless of what happens. So I think he's definitely in the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, I agree. We're almost done. This is my favorite team, San Antonio Spurs. So I am really looking forward with this player. So Derek White, do you think it's worth holding on Derek White? It's he's uh should be out for a couple of months, maybe two or at least 1 month. So do we
Yeah,
still hold on Derek?
Yeah, it's really dependent on your league settings and how you're going. If you are in say a rotisserie league and you've got some game limits, you can probably hold on to Derek White. A little bit harder in daily changes head-to-head leagues. Also depends how many IR spots and if they're being used at the moment. So a range of factors, but yeah, at the moment, he's injured that toe again. Doesn't have a timetable at this stage, so yeah, not a good start to the season for Derek White at all.
And then Mustang. Is it far fetched if we expect a top 50 value for Keldon Johnson? I mean, he is really doing great.
Yeah, he's been smashing it and currently sits right on that 50 mark. 30 minutes per game, 15 points, the 8 rebounds, 1.3 steals, 1.4 threes, zero point 0.7 blocks. The efficiency's good, just a really nice, well-rounded game, and yeah, he's looking like one of the steals of the season.
Yeah, definitely the pickup player of the year, most likely, because I've scooped him after drafting for like almost 70% of my league. So
Uh,
he wasn't drafted so high during drafts. Lastly, Lamarcus Aldridge. Earlier, I'm happy to see him healthy and looking great, but those sore knees got me concerned. Were you concerned?
Yeah, definitely. Good to see him back today against the Lakers and played 25 minutes, but a 36-year-old big man with knee soreness. Yeah, he's definitely something to be worried about. So we'll see how that goes, but yeah, I think we're going to see a few more DMPs for Lamarcus Aldridge this season.
Yeah, it's really bummer for those people who drafted Lamarcus Aldridge.
Mm.
Toronto Raptors, they are struggling as a whole. But what can you say about? Well, first off, Pascal Siakam. He seems to be still the bubble Siakam.
Yeah, once again, the field goal percentage in particular is just shooting 40% from the field on 16 attempts, so a massive negative in that category. The rest of the numbers aren't too bad. The 17 points, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.8 threes. Defensive numbers aren't great, but they never will be. So yeah, he just really needs to get that efficiency back up, and that'll see him jump back up the rankings.
Yeah. Personally, when Kawhi left Toronto, I was thinking I really can't see that main man swag from Siakam. I mean, most elite players have that. For some reason, I can't see that with Siakam. So maybe
Yeah.
that's also one reason why. I mean, this might be his game. He's not that player that could be the main man of
Yep.
a franchise. How about this is an opposing direction. Norman Powell trending really, really, really down, and then the Water Boy, Chris Boucher trending up. Given that uh, Baines and Len is seems like to be getting small minutes.
Yeah, so Norman Powell had a massive season last year. He was outstanding. Has really struggled coming into this season, and it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. There's a fair chance that at some stage Kyle Lowry will get injured and miss time, and that would be the chance for Norman Powell's value to increase and be added onto rosters. And Chris Boucher, he's had some really good games. He's had some really poor games, and with the Toronto Raptors don't quite trust him yet, as saw against Philly, where he just played the 5 minutes and in a bad matchup for him. But let's hope that he can get a bit more trust, and that playing time is a little bit more consistent, because when he does play big minutes, he can fill the box score as well as anybody.
Yeah, and then there was a game when he got 7 blocks and
Yeah,
people crazy and already were hype. But unfortunately, after that game, he got the 5 minute playing
yeah,
time.
definitely.
So
Yeah, it's crazy.
then we have second to the last, the Utah Jazz. Finally, Donovan Mitchell break out with sort of a slump, but basically it's maybe something that he can actually can't sustain coming off the bubble performance. So people were actually expecting that Donovan would do that, but unfortunately he didn't. But what I found positive about his game during those slump was the additional assist and then some defensive stats. But now I guess he's teaming up again.
Yeah, he's had a really strange start of the season, and once again, his field goal percentage is just so poor. The 38% from the field on nearly 20 attempts, making him one of the biggest negative um, impactors in that category, which has seen his value right down. Um, where are we? Donovan Mitchell as well. Yeah, good scoring numbers. Like I said, on that poor efficiency, so that really needs to come up. No steals in the last 3 games either, which is a bit of a concern. So I think there's still a little bit of upside there in Donovan Mitchell, although he's playing really strong numbers. So yeah, a little bit there to work on for D Mitchell, and yeah, hopefully, like I said, that efficiency and steals, yeah, come back up, and the turnovers as well come down a little bit.
Yeah. Someone who took I mean got hot when Donovan Mitchell was slumping was Mike Conley and Royce O'Neal. What do you think about these two guys? Seems like Mike Conley is going back to his old self, I guess, but I don't think those snipes from the outside will stick. And then Royce O'Neal apparently is getting those minutes away from Boyan for the 4 spot.
Yeah. So Mike Connolly here, there was some big question marks around him coming into the season, whether last season, was just a down year, or whether that was the start of the decline. And at the moment, it looks like it was maybe just a down year. He's had a really nice start to the season, some really big scoring games, the threes, and still contributing in the steals category as well. And Royce O'Neal, like you said, getting some really strong minutes. Maybe he is starting to eat into Bojan Bogdanovic's time, but just doesn't quite contribute enough at the moment, and particularly with so much ball going through Mitchell, Connolly, Gobert, and then even Clarkson off the bench. It's really hard for Royce O'Neal to put up numbers.
Yeah. And our last team, the Washington Wizards, started really poor, but they are getting better and better as days go by. But someone that doesn't gets better as of the moment is Davis Bertans. So apparently, I was expecting him to be like has a strong start, given that I was thinking that Bertans and Westbrook could be a threat because of Bertans outside shooting, but it's not yet happening. So what do you think about that? Looking at it, it's been the Brody, Bill, and Thomas Bryant show.
Yeah, definitely, and a big reason is Davis Bertans. Yeah, struggle from the field, shooting just 35% from the field, so a long, long way down from where he was last season. So I think he'll have a hot streak at some point. An average 12 or 14 points and 3 to 3.5 threes per game, and there'll be a time where he's a really valuable fantasy player, but it's just not clicking at the moment for Davis Bertans.
Yeah. Another couple of guys would be Rui and Denny. So, well, given that from the Philippines, we're an Asian country, so we are rooting for those Asian players. But I guess we are, for me, we are kind of overvaluing Rui. The moments that he got good stats was the time that they really had a great lead. So it's something that is expected. But I mean, Danny is really knocking on the door with getting those minutes because outside from scoring, Danny is doing more than Rui. And then if we count on Westbrook getting all those rebounds, I can't see any other possibility that Rui could like be improve or provide more value.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that Rui Hashimura is a long term fantasy player for us this season or down the track. Some okay points, but really struggles to get those defensive numbers. And Denny as well, like you said, the Wizards are crying out for someone to really grab the small forward position and make it their own. And there's a few blokes or a few guys there in contention, and we'll see how it plays out. But it's really a three-man show with Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, and Thomas Bryant.
Yeah, wow. So we actually finished all the 30 teams, and I promised Matt to be the episode to be under an hour, but I guess we had an overtime of 30 minutes. So thank you so much, Matt. Again, I want to give you the floor to like tell anything or promote anything because actually here in Fantasy Basketball PH, I've been doing this like alone, and it was like just 1 month, and I'm really I'm really humbled with the content and the overwhelming support that we have. So this episode is quite special for me and for the whole Fantasy Basketball family. So I'm giving you the floor, Matt.
No, I appreciate you having me on, and like I said, yeah, you took the time out to go through our 30 deep lead and spend a couple of hours dissecting it. So the least I could do is come and say hello and have a chat. But if anyone hasn't checked out basketball, wants to come over, subscribe, have a look. I write a couple of articles a week on there. We've got so much or so many tools and cool features that if you're a casual fantasy basketball player, it'll definitely take you into a hardcore fantasy player. Follow me on Twitter at SMan Sports. I try to get to as many questions as I can, and I know there's always a lot of fans in the Philippines. So, definitely one of the more passionate fan bases out there. So, appreciate all the questions, and thanks for having me on, Papi Roy, and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. So before we end, I would like to thank everyone who watch and will watch later in our upload for the page in Fantasy Basketball PH. Again, I want you guys to always keep us humbled by liking, subscribing, following, and obviously giving us feedback. So how can we improve more and like help us push the fantasy basketball here in the Philippines, because we all know that the Filipinos are one of the craziest NBA and basketball fans in the world. So that's why I'm creating a venue to at least reach out to you guys, and then maybe those the likes of Matt Smith, a big name in the industry, could also show that there are more values and more quality content outside of those you see in the usual markets, the usual Yahoo references and all. So let's support Matt and the Basketball Monster. Moving forward, just follow him. You'll definitely love his takes. Again, we are available in YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast. By the way, Matt, people are saying that they are calling me like the Josh Lois of the Philippines. So I'm quite near with Josh. He's a monster in fantasy playoffs. But something that I could say is I have a better beard
You-
than Josh.
yeah, you definitely have a better beard than Josh. It's not even close.
Thank you
Definitely,
for that.
definitely, definitely more
Yeah.
handsome than Josh as well.
I'm hoping in the future maybe Josh or Kyle would drop by. It would be something special, but nonetheless, you being here is the highlight of the podcast for 1.5 months of uh like we've started for like just posting some thoughts, and now we are doing podcast, and it's the 27th episode. So thank you so much, Matt, for being a part of Fantasy Basketball PH.
My pleasure. Thanks, Puppy Roy.
Thank you, mate. So again, thank you so much, guys, and watch out. We'll have more goodies, and follow Matt at S-Man Sports in Twitter. Bye bye.